As mentioned earlier, the gender gap at GCSE is around 10 percentage points between boys and girls. At AS and A level, girls are more likely to pass and to get higher grades. The gap is narrower than GCSE. In 2006, 95.8% of girls passed 2 or more A levels against 94% of boys. At both AS and A level, girls were more likely to gain A, B and C grades, even in so-called boys subjects such as maths and physics. The average A level points score in state schools was 274 for boys and 295 for girls. On vocational courses such as BTECs, a large proportion of girls achieve distinctions in every subject, including those such as engineering and construction, where girls are only a tiny minority of students. So we're now going to examine the main explanations for why girls are now outdoing boys. So just like when we looked at class, we will look at internal factors and external factors. So for gender, factors outside the school include things like feminism, family, and changes to employment. And for school factors, we'll look at the effect of anti-school subcultures and pro-school subcultures, policies, and role models in school. So we're first going to look at external factors, all the factors following this slide. We'll look at home factors and society in general. So feminism and the changes that have come about as a result of the feminist movement have had a large impact on girls' achievement. Since the 1960s, the feminist movement has challenged the traditional stereotype of a woman's role as mother and housewife. Whilst feminists have argued we have not yet achieved full equality, one cannot deny that massive progress has been made. Feminism has raised women's expectations and self-esteem, as well as creating changes in the law. McRobbie argues that these changes are partly reflected in media images. McRobbie conducted studies in the 1970s and in 1994, and she compared her analysis of girls' magazines from both eras. She argued that in the 1970s, girls' magazines such as Jackie emphasised the importance of getting married and not being left on the shelf, whereas nowadays they contain assertive, independent women. Similarly, current affairs programmes and soap operas now highlight the importance of self-esteem and personal choice for women. As we can see, the changes encouraged by feminism may affect girls' self-image and ambitions with regard to their family and careers. In turn, this may explain improvements in their education achievement. Changes in the family have also been put forward as one of the explanations for why girls are doing better. There have been major changes in the family since the 1970s. A part of this change is because the 1971 Divorce Law Reform Act equalised the position of men and women. In 1971, women were able to use irreconcilable differences as a reason for divorce, whereas previously only men were really able to campaign for divorce on the grounds of this. As a result of this change, there was an increase in the divorce rate. You may know that more divorces are actually instigated by women. There's also an increase in cohabitation and a decrease in the number of first marriages. An increase in the number of lone parent families, which are mainly headed by females, and smaller families. So these changes affect girls' attitudes towards education because increased numbers of female-headed families mean that more women take on the breadwinner role. These female-headed families provide a strong role model for girls. Girls can see that their mothers are financially independent and they do not need to rely on a man to look after them. To be independent, girls need well-paid jobs and therefore good qualifications. Increases in the divorce rate may also suggest to girls that they certainly cannot rely on a husband to be their provider. So girls may realise that they need to look after themselves, and in order to look after themselves, they need to make sure that they have good qualifications. The next thing that we'll look at is how socialisation in the family affects educational achievement. Oakley and McRobbie are studies that you should be familiar with. So Oakley argued that there were 4 main ways in which children were socialised: manipulation, canalisation, different activities, and verbal appellations. So if we look at manipulation and canalisation, girls are socialised to be feminine. Manipulation is the way in which parents direct the child's gender into what is deemed appropriate for their sex. So girls and boys may get sanctioned in different ways. Oakley saw this as a negative thing, but in actual fact, this can be positive for girls because girls are told off perhaps for getting dirty or being disorganized, and all of these things actually help them in the education system. In terms of canalisation, girls and boys are channeled into different activities. It was previously thought by Oakley that, again, this disadvantaged girls because they'd be playing with dolls, which encouraged nurturing activities. But a lot of the activities that girls take part in are actually language-based, and it's language that's important for education, whereas the toys boys play with do not encourage these skills. This can be reinforced by McRobbie's study. We looked at McRobbie when we studied Unit 2. McRobbie argued that girls developed a bedroom culture to get away from patriarchy. And within this bedroom culture, they talked about magazines, general gossip, and boys. Again, this develops key language skills that are necessary for the education system. Hannon also argued that girls were better socialised for schooling, and the way in which boys and girls spend their leisure time mean that boys can be disadvantaged. So boys are more likely to spend their leisure time perhaps on their own, on computers, and again, this does not develop language skills, whereas girls' leisure is more about interacting with others. Changes in employment, again, is another reason for why girls are achieving better. Some of the changes in employment are directly linked to feminism. So there have been important changes, such as the 1970 Equal Pay Act. The 1970 Equal Pay Act made it illegal to pay women less than men for work of equal value. And the 1975 Sex Discrimination Act outlaws sex discrimination in employment. The proportion of women in employment has risen from 47% in 1959 to over 70% in 2007. The growth of the service sector and flexible part-time work has offered opportunities for women, while traditional men's jobs have declined. Since 1975, the pay gap between men and women has fallen from 30% to 17%. Some women are now breaking through the glass ceiling, the invisible barrier that keeps them out of high-level professional and managerial jobs. These changes means that girls now see their future in terms of paid work. The opportunities are there for all to see, and therefore there's something to strive for and work towards. Greater career opportunities and better pay for women, and the role models that successful career women offer, provide a real incentive for girls to gain qualifications. We're now going to look at internal factors in the school. Before we look at that, we'll just have a quick look back at Sue Sharp's study. So Sue Sharp originally found that girls had low aspirations. However, she conducted the study again in 1991. In 1974, she found that girls had low aspirations, they felt educational success was unfeminine, and believed that if they appeared to be ambitious and intelligent, they would be considered unattractive. They gave their priorities of love, marriage, husbands, children, jobs and careers in that order. In the 1990s, girls' ambitions had changed, and they had different order of priorities, careers and being able to support themselves. Sharp found that girls were more than likely to see their future as independent women with a career, rather than as dependent on their husband and his income. So Sharp argued that this was largely due to external factors, and that changes in the family and employment had had a clear impact on girls' ambitions. So after that diversion, we will now turn to internal factors, and we'll look at the factors in the school that affect girls' achievement. So the first thing that we'll look at is the effect of equal opportunity policies. Some of these policies link to marketisation and the 1988 Education Reform Act, and some of the changes that have occurred as a result of this. So we need to make clear links between educational policy and gender and achievement. Feminism and feminist ideas have had a massive impact on the education system. Those who run the system are now more aware of gender issues, and teachers are more sensitive to the need to avoid gender stereotyping. Indeed, Ofsted now inspect an area called equality and diversity, and equality and diversity is a key focus for all schools. Teachers are required to illustrate examples with positive female role models. There are some more clear policies that have been specifically aimed at girls. Policies such as Just and Wise, Girls into Science and Technology, and Women into Science and Engineering, encourage girls to pursue careers in these non-traditional areas. Female scientists have visited schools, acting as role models. Efforts have been made to raise science teachers' awareness of gender issues. Non-sexist careers advice has been provided, and learning materials in science reflecting girls' interests have been developed. Also, the introduction of the national curriculum in 1988 removed one source of gender inequality by making girls and boys study mostly the same subjects. Alison Kelly argues that making science part of the compulsory core curriculum for all pupils has helped to make opportunities more equal. Joe Bowler sees the impact of equal opportunity policies as one of the main reasons for why girls are now achieving higher. Barriers have been removed, schools have become more meritocratic, and as a result, girls who work harder than boys achieve more.